found out that she's going to school in RISD, and I knew she was the perfect person for this job. When I found out somebody, um, we do the Chinese American journey. So I'm gonna let her tell you why she's the perfect person for this job, and what she's passionate about. So you can tell about how you go about it. Yeah. So I'm gonna turn this over
I'll
to
share a little
Lily.
bit about myself. My name is Lily. I'm a fifth-year undergraduate. I study architecture at the Rhode Island School of Design. I just came from studio right now, that's why I got some paint on me. But yeah, my family has been connected with Jeannie since I was in high school. She taught after-school Chinese language program that I helped TA for, and then I took Chinese lessons through the Cultural Society with her as well. So she reached out to me last March to work on this prototype, and I was really excited to make a model because I love working in miniatures, and I'm also adopted from China. I was adopted at 19 months, and my parents are in the audience here supporting me. I've come up. But it was like a really meaningful process to do this research. As you know, like schools aren't, mandated to teach AAPI histories. So I really wasn't exposed to my own culture and heritage growing up. So doing this project, it was just like really amazing. It was a good learning experience. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions following this, but I do want to like put some things out there for you guys to think about. But what is the vision? I would say an authentic first step towards equity is representation. So that was sort of the mode I was operating under. As some of you might know, Providence had a Chinatown in the 1880s. It came to an end in 1914 when homes and businesses were demolished to widen the roadway. There was a recent project by artist Hugh Warren who curated the exhibit Seeing Providence Chinatown. So I use that as inspiration and sort of a place to start. So it was really pivotal for me. So today, documents, images, and objects from these places are stored in archives, and the rich histories of the Chinese diaspora in Rhode Island are passed down through oral tradition. And on June 29th, 2022, a bill was signed into law requiring AAPI history and culture to be taught in Rhode Island schools. And this work was due. This was due to the work and dedication of Asian American activists. AAPI history will no longer be taught as secondary to U.S. history, but in fact embedded and entangled within it. So beginning with the Chinese American Journey exhibit, this pilot project is part of a much larger effort to create an AAPI history museum. This traveling exhibit prototype acts as an opportunity to envision new realities and futures for AAPI groups. It is a joyful and ongoing work that captures moments of transformation, hardship, leadership, resilience, and humanity within Chinese American experience in the U.S. The design makes specific allowances for community research, interactivity, programming, iteration, and replication. So building a public space for AAPI education can do the following things. Celebrate Asian American cultural heritage and the history of leadership. Teach a comprehensive timeline of major historical periods in U.S. history, and the focus on Asian immigrants and their experience in the U.S. Another is confront legacies of xenophobia and anti-Asian discrimination, and to prompt an ongoing dialogue about the role Asian Americans played in the formation of the U.S. and its identity. So just a brief look into the design process, because I'll be happy to talk about that more during the discussion. But this was the product of an 8-week-long internship that started in June. And I've been working on it this last week, kind of doing the last minute details, but it was a summer project. The history of Chinese America has been organized into 11 major timelines, or time periods. Each are numbered and reflected to mirror this, but the organization of space keeps in mind that history is not a linear progression, but a cyclical pattern. The exhibit asks visitors and viewers to wander from vehicle to vehicle, of which are in loose chronological order. So it asks for close-up interaction and active participation, which I think is super important for museums and learning today, multiple learning modalities. The essential design is a mobile plywood vehicle. It's on wheels, so it can travel from place to place. Hopefully it can all fit into a 26-inch foot long U-Haul truck, but I have not yet measured that. But that is not really the scope of the project. So, and in this model, if you come up close later on, it's organized into 3 discrete spaces, oriented to encourage movement and wandering. But in theory, in this model, you could enter at really any point, although this is maybe the primary entry point for today. But yeah, some interactive components. There's a Chinese-style lazy Susan table for hosting educational programming. I think that's so important for traveling museums is to like really be embedded in the community and have opportunities for the community to buy in, but also appropriate the space for their own uses. I think it's very empowering. And so there will be monitors screening oral histories. The Cultural Society is doing a really great job collecting those at the moment. So hopefully in this conceptual diagram, you can see there's spaces that make allowances for that. And then importantly, the exhibit vehicles invite visitors to incorporate their own personal artifacts and documents. So the prototype serves to be a useful and general diagram for spatial layout, scope of information, and opportunities for community participation. And second, it is a comprehensive effort to visualize a full-scale exhibit. So yeah, that was some introduction to the model.
So I am actually going to turn this over. Also, in addition, I forgot. I know I did forget to say something. So this prototype is we just primarily do 2 ethnic groups under the AAPI umbrella term. So the Chinese American journey Lily did. And so that's another side is the Cambodian American journey, which is represented by the sculpture here by a high school student, Chris Mayavaki. He is a Moses Brown High School student graduating this year, class of 2024. He's not here today because he has college applications. He has other stuff, as you know, other good stuff senior year last year. So I'm just going to explain what this project is, what inspired him. Okay, so when I know that somebody is an artist, I go to them and let them come up with inspiration. So I don't really dictate to people. But so Chris had been with another researcher, Indigo, doing a lot of oral interview over the summer. So he never learned about AAPI history before and know nothing. He's an Asian American himself. From the oral history interview that he did, he found out a little bit Cambodian American journeys, and what inspired him is that he felt like that. You can see this here. It's a rice paddy, and he's come up with a hand. Okay, so it's actually a fractured hand because of the journey, the hardship, the journey that they went through, because we learned about it, and so that's what inspired me. Okay, it's not a finished product. Like I said, we're all in a prototype phase, so the next time when you do come to see this on a mobile museum, there's more stuff to add to it. I'm not gonna tell you exactly what needs to be added, so you guys need to come back and see the mobile museum. I like to keep you guys in suspense a little bit. So this is the Cambodian American journey, so we did both of them. And the reason we chose the Chinese American journey and the Cambodian American journey is because Chinese people have been here the longest. Well, one of the longest. I think Filipino Americans are here the first, right? I do see. Cambodian Americans started about 50 years ago. So one is a very long journey that way back the late 1800s, and another group starts about 50 years ago. They kind of give us a sense what the feasibility is in terms of research timeline. So it just gives us a sense of that. I actually didn't do the hands-on research, and I'm going to introduce you to the next person on our team. She did all the research and give the information to Lily. Okay, so Indigo is going to come up, so you can talk about your research journey and about her background. I think you have a very unique background to tell people what you already learned before you start this project. Okay, so let her know.
I don't have too much to add on to what Lily said because she outlined the prototype and where we are now, but I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit about the research I did this summer for the Cultural Society. I'm Indigo Midbari. I'm a second-year undergraduate at Brown. I'm concentrating in ethnic studies and focusing on Asian American history, and I'm really interested in increasing our representation of smaller South Asian countries such as Nepal, being half Nepalese myself. And so this summer I basically worked to support the creation of this prototype by finding primary sources that could go in this museum and writing the little exhibit descriptions, which you can't read in the prototype because it's quite small, but in the exhibit book you can read what would be on the plaques, and this is an actual museum in the exhibit books that Lily made. So primary sources that include newspaper articles, photos, much more, and I just looked in online databases and reached out to archives and asked them if we could use them in our prototype. And then I just did it's obviously really hard to distill down the entire history of a group of people, but I did my best to summarize the key events in the Chinese American the history in the United States. So mostly providing support to create this prototype by providing primary sources and writing exhibit descriptions. So that's what I did for the Cultural Society this summer.
So I think one thing that's very unique about Indigo is that before she came to this project, she already took a course in Asian American history, right? At Brown University and in her high school. And the reason is she went to high school in California. In California already, AAPI history in K-12. So which we just have. We just passed this bill. It's a matter of implementing it, executing it. So thank you so much for letting us know. So in a couple of minutes, I just want to show you what I have in here. So if you see these pictures here in the back, these pictures were actually taken from Guangzhou Museum of Overseas Chinese when I was in Asia this last summer. So they kind of used the approach that I have in mind. We are not concerned about artifacts or things like that, So we recreate, and that's exactly what they do. They recreate the art to illustrate the history. So I don't know if anybody recognize what this is? Railroad, right? The transcontinental railroad. During the late 1800s, the Chinese Americans. So that's kind of what they did. They recreated the scene from that time period. So a lot of these pictures I took from there. Amazing, that's the idea that we're gonna have. We are recreating the art. We're gonna be employing lots of artists, bring history, live, and these are the pictures that I took. So that's kind of the approach that we're gonna use. Let's see, I don't know if I cover everything. Okay, so we're gonna open up to the floor if you have any questions, or anything that you'd like to see, what the ideal AAPI history is. It's like, I think maybe we don't because we haven't had them yet, right? Or what kind of features, what elements, what kind of things would you like to see in an AAPI history museum? Leo, do you have any of that?
They take to make the little miniature things.
You mean here? This one over there? How long? How long does it take? I think 6 weeks, right? Longer. Well, with your help, the next one, it may be shorter, okay? You need to come to help too. Yeah, so that's a good question, 6 to 8. I would say 6+ weeks. What other questions do we have? If you don't have any question, I'm gonna have to ask you a question, okay? So, why do you think that we have to have an AAPI History Museum in Rhode Island? Why Rhode Island? Good. Yeah, real dancer. Because we live here? That's true, that's a good reason, that's exactly what I told one of the funders. Yep, go ahead.
I have an answer, just in being the adopted parent of an Asian child, when Lily was growing up, there was nothing in the curriculum about Asian history in her school curriculum, in her school books, and that. And so that, I really noticed the lack of that, and also, they also didn't have any good Barbies.
Asian body, right?
The only
It's like,
Asian
oh.
Barbies that they had were dressed in very old-fashioned, traditional dress. I did find one of those, but that was one thing that I noticed, that there wasn't, a mainstream, I mean, Asian people live in the modern world
Yeah,
and wear clothes like everyone else does, and yet you couldn't find at that time an Asian Barbie or Asian dolls that lived in the modern world. So I found that difficult for as a parent of an Asian child. So that in fact, I think one thing that Lily mentioned, maybe you can speak to that, Lily, was that when you were looking for the little people for your exhibit, can you explain how that was kind of difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I made the exhibit, like I made the model, but then I was looking for people to populate my world, and so, a quick Google search, I looked for Asian American PNG transparent, and unfortunately, like a lot of the times it was nearly impossible to find them online. So I guess like in terms of representation, it's very limited. So I did my best to create a diverse crowd who would actually, interact with this model. But if you look on the internet, that's just not a true representation of how Google works. You have to, it's more labor, it's more time. I feel like, more opportunities for representation are much needed.
I think it begins with representation first, and the equity goes down from that on. So I'm still pondering if you guys have any more idea why we should be in Rhode Island, right? Yes, yes.
Well, I would say, like, when Lily was discussing the fact that there was a Chinatown in Providence, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that some of the history has gone unrecognized, the fact that I didn't learn about that, I went to the same school as Lily did. We grew up together, and yeah, neither one of us, ever learned about that. And I work in Newport currently, and they have an exhibit about Chinese Americans in Newport. I didn't know that like most of the businesses down in Newport were mainly like owned by Asian Americans. So I feel like it's important to keep the history alive too, and that's part of why the museum should exist.
Yeah. How many would show me hands, how many of you knew that there was a Providence Chinatown here before? Some hands, okay? Half and half, I would say half and half. I actually did not. I did not know that. And I've been living here, I think that up to the 7th year, that's when I discovered there was a Providence Chinatown. Yeah. Come on in here, Sophie.
So much trust, I know.
Yay, okay. Sophia bought the dance costume, so that's what we want to display in the Cambodian. Yes, she did. That's all right. Yes, traffic, that's all right, no problem. So at the end of the show, feel free to come up here to the costume. So she wants to show us the culture, the Cambodian culture. Okay, so, so this is. So a lot of it, I think that the Cambodian culture, the colors imitate the cane, right? The cane.
The cane. Is it a multi-color?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, it was so bad.
So we want to show you, I actually didn't know so much about Cambodian culture myself until I started doing the project and also so she taught me a lot of.
This is one of our custom and coconut, and also
You see how this,
It's a real coconut.
that's what they do.
It's real.
So I want people to kind of feel and touch later. Okay, so anyway, I want to come back to talk about the Providence Chinatown. Okay, so I do want to say something about that. So a few days ago, I talked to somebody, I'm gonna name the person. I think that he told me that Providence Chinatown was demolished because they want to widen the streets. It was different than what I read in Small State History. So what I read was that it was demolished because of anti-Asian sentiment at that time. So how the Chinese were thought of as were discriminated against and thought of as being inferior to non-white white people at that time. So my thoughts were, and still are, thinking about, so this would be a good place to start an AAPI History Museum because we're addressing something that already happened in the past, but nobody talked about it again, you know. So being 2023, 3 years after the pandemic, you know, we talk about the racialized violence. I think it is about time to talk about difficult subjects again. So I'm not sure where Cultural Society, what approach we are going to talk about. I thought about using it as like a project for some of the students perhaps to do some research. First, we want to find out the why first before we implement action that may not be appropriate for it. Maybe, I don't think of it, protest is the first step. So people usually protest when nobody listens to them. And I think that it is, maybe if we bring up the subject, you know, the mayors or the governor will be willing to listen to us. So I'm just hoping that there's some kind of recognition, you know, maybe even a public apology that from the state level, the city level can be issued to let the Chinese people feel that, you know, this has been addressed. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. And having an AAPI History Museum in this place is the best place because we wouldn't need to have it in Boston or New York. You'll be preaching to the choir, right? People already have the diversity.
Almost done.
Excellent. Right. So we can come back later to touch the field. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. So I don't know if you all have any more thoughts, and then we can share it. Oh.
Hi, how you doing? Kajette Solomon. I'm from the RISD Museum.
Yes.
We met recently at a conference. I'm the Social Equity and Inclusion Specialist at the museum. So I have tons of questions. I'm really, really excited and pushed my way to be here tonight because I wanted to hear more. I'm curious about community partners in building out archives and materials and images and such. All the parts of AAPI, like all of the communities. I know you said that there would be initial focus on Chinese Americans and Cambodian Americans, and I would hope that also the diversity of the diaspora that is Asian will be represented as well. And so that was one question, sort of like, who are those community partners in all of the representations of the AAPI community that you're reaching out to? That's my first question.
Okay. So part of it is like people like Sophie, you know, who you just met. Sophie is the executive director, if I say it right, Cambodian.
Cambodian community, President Cambodian community, yeah. And I also CEO of Mass Amsterdam Dance Troupe. We create the dance troupe. Wendy, where is he? Oh.
Yes.
Hi.
He was dance director. He in charge of the dance. I just work, promote, and help write grant and whatever we can to keep a culture, you know, alive.
So that's it. And we also partner with Center for Southeast Asians. Kanika is here. So the Cambodian, so I hope that answers your question. So I think right now in Rhode Island, lots of Asian Americans are still working silo. You know, they don't think of themselves as Asian American yet. And that is a little bit part of the reasons I think it's easier to reach the second generation to work with at this time. So if you really go back to the history, Asian history, go back to the homeland, I guess it really depends how attached the person is to their homeland. Some of them, when they're here, they don't think of it. I think it's just still very, I don't know how, I'm just a little bit kind of removed from it. How do you say it, Kanika? Help me out. With the Cambodian Americans, you work with them every day and on Center for Southeast Asian. Tell us about your experience. So I'm gonna let her tell it.
Hello everybody. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I'm gonna sound a little nasally. So my name is Kanika Pook. I'm the Director of Programs at the Center for Southeast Asians. We are a long-time social services agency. We're located in Providence, Rhode Island. So the center serves the main Southeast Asian groups, which are Cambodians, Laotian, Hmong, and Vietnamese. So our center, we focus on social services. So when Jeannie approached us to help find clients and individuals who would like to share their story, we got a lot of our clients, and I actually am one of the person who volunteered to be interviewed. So there's a long history with the Southeast Asians that came to Providence in Rhode Island, and I wanted to make sure that Jeannie and her team incorporated our stories into the museum. So as much as their stories of the Chinese American, the Korean American, Southeast Asians in the area also have a big story to tell. Most of us came as war refugees, so our story is similar, but not the same as other groups. So hopefully, as you develop more into the museum, we will have that. So what Jeannie was referencing in terms of what our goal at the center is that we want to make sure that the clients get services. We don't want anybody to feel like, you have to be a certain ethnic group or a certain type of individual to come get our services. So we remind clients that we help with all the social services that we don't know about. Like my parents, so I'm in my 40s. I came when I was 2. So my parents came when they were in their 20s and 30s. 40 years later, they're aging into retirement. Our Southeast Asian countries don't have retirement systems, so they're understanding Social Security. They're understanding Medicare. There's understanding Part A, Part B, Part D. It's open enrollment now. So those are the things that we want to make sure that we help in terms of our agency. But the museum, I want to have them incorporate the experiences of the reasons we came and how we here. And so we want to make sure that those stories are represented. So that's how we are helping the Cultural Society in helping to tell the Southeast Asian side of the story. And as well, our clients and ourselves, we will be learning about the other Asian American groups here in Rhode Island.
Yeah, so I think the challenges in her agency faces is that young people see their agency as serving the old people, like so to speak, like
Yes.
they don't think of them as, the younger people don't go to them, right? And the reason.
And I'll go elaborate that a little bit more. So like our services, interpreting services, helping them navigate the healthcare system. When my parents came, they didn't know the school systems, the medical systems, and insurance is still foreign in a lot of the third world countries. It's like you only go to the hospital or the doctor when you need to. Here, you're supposed to have routine appointments. So the individuals that have those services, they're getting older. They're kind of homebound, and then there's younger generation. So like we grew up in this having English. I'm finally a parent now, so I don't see myself. If I didn't work at the agency, I probably wouldn't use our services because I know English. I know I've been to the school system. I know the healthcare system. So we want to remind our peers and our groups that there are referrals and helping each other, and we want to make sure that we don't see ourselves as Cambodian American, as Laotian American, and we want to interact more with each other because sometimes we will be sectioned off, and there's it happens with all different groups in the area. There's the Laotian temple, there's Khmer temple, and I hate to say it, but like Cambodian, there's like 3 temples. Like you kind of associate yourselves in. But that's like, you know, in the Christian, there's the Catholic Church, there's, you know, other denominations. So especially now we're so sensitive in terms of religion, and there's all this, you know, ethnic tension going on. I want us to see this as a way to bring people together, and that we're here as Americans, but we all have a story to tell.
Yeah, so I think that we all want, so a lot of ethnic group, I think that as you go into talk about each ethnic group is the generational issue sometimes. The younger people know English, you know, they don't feel like that, they need to, the parents understand that they need the services, and sometimes they still do, in terms of bringing in equity in school, they might not be there, and you know, other issues as they come up. I think as we're doing AAPI History Museum, I feel like that we're gonna need a lot of translation service. A lot of what we do here is, and I feel really actually feel inadequate, is only in English. I'm gonna show you the website. It is only in English right now. So we are looking to have more translator to translate it into their language, so the first generation Asian American can also access this. And I think that's one of the problems with museum in general. A lot of museum studies is more think of like for the people more educated, you know, more well-to-do, and this is not what we want to do, you know. And in fact, I'm gonna tell you we rolled out on there is principle, RICC, R-I-C-C-C, respect. So we want to come in with the principle, respect people where they are, intellectually, emotionally, financially, where they are. And in stands for inclusions. We want all perspectives, all learning styles, and everything, included in here. C stands for compassions. So every time when we talking about history, we're gonna talk about something that is very hard to talk about, you know. And it could be incidents of violence sometimes. So compassions, not just for the victim, compassion for the perpetrator as well. So think about that for a moment, and maybe go into your self-reflection and think about that. And C stand for community. So whatever we do, whatever we say, impact others. So we have to think of that. So the C. And the last C is collaboration. So we realize that some groups already done things really well, like collaborations, like your agency have done something well. We love to work with you. We love to collaborate with you. So those are the principles that the museums have, R-I-C-C-C-C, so that's what we have. It's like easy to remember if you think of it. And we come in with that philosophy, and I think that would be a lot easier. And I would love to be able to say that in Cambodian and Vietnamese, or you know, Thai, to speak to the third generation. I only speak one other language, Chinese, and that's all the group that I could reach out to. But I'm just saying that we need more people that we reach out, especially the older generation, first generation, where they don't think that they will go to a museum to learn. I want it to be for everyone.
So I apologize, I didn't come in at the beginning of this lecture, or this briefing. So how encompassing is this museum? Because there are many different groups of Asians, and all with different histories of coming here.
Yes.
So I'm going to speak from both myself. We've been on the east side for years. My grandfather had a restaurant on this street in the 40s, 50s. My father had a restaurant on this street for years.
Yeah.
So, and we're in our 60s. So that's a long history from the Chinese Exclusion Act till now.
Yes.
So that's a different history from
Yes.
someone coming in from the Vietnam War or refugees. So how do you make that all, it seems like a big reach to reach all those different experiences in one.
I know this is not an easy project. it's not an easy project.
And where would you show this? I mean, where is the audience to say? Because each facet of the Asian experience is different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I know when I first do the Chinese American journey, Cambodian American journey, I talked to another professor, and she said that no, that's looking aside. I think initially we're doing it at any time when people are learning something in the beginning. It's good to scaffold. When I was a language teacher, I would come in there, I scaffold them, like break it down into the little component before them. And I think this is just our beginning stage. We do it this way, do it, in the beginning, Cambodian, and I think that when we really look at the whole humanities, when we look at it, we are a lot more in common than we are different, if you look at it, right? So when you talk about, and I think that the Chinese American people can learn a lot from what they have already gone through, right? So for example, the generational issues within the family, there is nothing new with the Cambodians. Chinese people went through that too, right? When they first came here, the young teenagers they think that the parents don't understand them. They went through the same thing. So I think those are the things that the lessons that we can, pass it down to another group, let them learn. I don't know if I answered your question. Are you saying that?
Well, I'm just saying that it's just overall so many different experiences under Asian, but each part of being Asian is different.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can reach a certain core, and someone would be interested, like we would be interested in the Chinese American experience. Someone else would be interested in the Laotian experience coming here. So they're all so different in a way that, and yes, there is a commonality that come in as an immigrant. But you can say the same thing with the Irish and the Italians. You come in as an immigrant, and you learn a different way, the melting pot, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to make it specific for Asian, it just seems like such a big umbrella. And it's like, where is the museum going to be? I just play the devil's advocate. It's like, where's the museum right now? I'm thinking it's mobile.
Yes.
And where's the reach for it? Where is it going to go?
So primarily, I think right now, because the mobile museum, we reach to where most the Asians are right now is the Chinese and Cambodian, right? So for example, I know that one of the questions was, what are the Pacific Islanders? And that was a good question, right? I actually have an ad on our website or somewhere, I don't remember where I put the ad. I was calling for people who identify themselves as Pacific Islanders. So it's identified process. If they don't identify themselves as Pacific Islander, we wouldn't know, right? So we have to put out this ad, see how many people will respond to such an ad. And if in fact there are no Pacific Islanders here, we will give ourselves the freedom to probably just call ourselves Asian American History Museum in a year or 2 years. So that's kind of what we're doing. But right now, I think initially, I hope I answered your question, we put our resources where we have the most numbers of Asian Americans. In this case, is Chinese Americans and Cambodian Americans in here. Doesn't mean that we're not going to look at the other groups. And I'm going to continue to have an ad or just I don't know if it's called an ad announcement to different organizations to just help, like people like at Brown University, pretty diverse. University, I think we go to more like university to help to identify with the students, maybe. And I think that people tend to go to when someone is like them. It's like if you want to have a lot of Cambodian customers or students, you have to first have one Cambodian student first, right? So people tend to to be like themselves. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, go to the university to see if we can find find out more about that segment of the Asians, and that's what we're gonna do. I actually don't have an answer to your question right now, so because we're just starting out, but this is a good question. It is something that in the back of my mind,
I think your heart will, I'm sorry, I know I get low sometimes,
Okay.
but your heart will be picking up little mud things.
Okay, all right.
And there's nothing wrong with that,
Oh, okay.
right? And because there's a lot of people down there wishing they had their planes and things like that, and they want to be part of the people.
Okay, yeah, it's true, it's true.
My husband has Alzheimer's, by the way, and so sometimes the words come out a little bit different, but he's complimenting Janie on her heart.
I have a
And
good
her
heart.
heart's in the right
Oh.
place.
I have a
That's
good
his
heart.
message.
You got a nice heart.
I have a good heart. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know Bill, yeah, yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what other, I wanted to ask you this another question.
Is it,